Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Preeti Shrodkar, Associate Professor, Communication and Soft Skills, MET Institute of Management. Today, we are going to talk about emigration to the Gulf. There are two interesting facts to note about emigration to the Gulf. One, that emigration to the Gulf has largely been from Kerala, and it has contributed very greatly towards the success and flourishing of Kerala as a state. And second, being a single-sex migration, that is, being confined largely to males, it has also led to the disruption of the family system and created a lot of problems both for the migrants and for their families back home. Let us now set the context for the discussion. The Gulf-India trading connections, which began over 3,000 years ago with Arab traders who set out in search of exotic food, cloth and luxury items, and ventured out by boat and camel caravans, developing barter trade, were seen to be the basis of the exchange between the Gulf region and India. This being the story of 3,000 years ago, let us see how contemporary Gulf migration began. Emigration from India to GCC, which includes Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, has increased remarkably since 1970s due to the oil boom in the region. The Gulf Cooperation Council, or the GCC, is an intergovernmental political and economic union of all Arab states of the Persian Gulf except Iraq. Its members are Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and UAE, as stated earlier. This union was formed on 25th May 1981 in Abu Dhabi, the state capital of UAE. The discovery of oil and manpower shortage in the Gulf to deal with this discovery attracted labor migration to the region. However, the presence of Indian laborers dates back to 1935 when Bapco, a Persian oil company, imported labor from India. Indian labor is now employed in many states in different capacities in varied oil companies. Moreover, the oil price increase in 1973 gave rise to massive investment programs in oil-producing countries in the Gulf and converted the desert economy into one of the fastest growing regions of the world. This resulted in an increased demand for labor in the region for all kinds of infrastructure and development projects. Let us now look at the Indian population in the Gulf. According to 2002 estimates, the Indian population in the GCC countries constitutes about 11% of the total population in those countries. The majority of these lives in Saudi Arabia, which is 46%, and the UAE, which is 27%. While currently it is estimated that a total of 25 million people are living there, according to the report of the Press Information Bureau, Ministry of Overseas Affairs, we are expecting this to plateau out. Let us now consider the composition of immigrants. Most Indian migrants in the Gulf are males and from a younger age group. The Indian states with the highest rate of migrants to the Gulf are Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh. Of these, according to Parekh, a majority of the people are Sunni Muslim, 56%, followed by Christians, 26%, and Hindus, only 16%. The categories of Indian workers in the Gulf are many. As per Storbeck, migrants to the Gulf can be divided into four types. 1. Migrants for business. 2. Migration of professionals in education, medicine and engineering. 3. Migration for technical works in GCC. And 4. Migration for unskilled and semi-skilled work like the construction business, domestic work as maids, transportation, business, etc. The most obvious reason for migration is the wage differential between salaries paid for the work at home and the salary given for the same work in the Gulf. The category of skilled workers or professional comprises about 30%, while 70% are semi-skilled or unskilled workers. What is important to remember in the context of Gulf emigration, though, is that it was easier for Indians to go to the GCC countries for work or business before 1970. Post 1970, restrictions have been put into place for non-Arabs. These restrictions have been due to the increase in number of entries of non-Arabs into the Gulf region. As a result, owning of businesses by non-Arabs has been disallowed, and Arabs also have to take on local, and if non-Arabs have their own business, then they have to take Arabs as business partners. The state's religion is Islam and the Sharia law is followed everywhere, while Arabic is the official language of the region. Let us now consider the migration from different regions of India to the Gulf. According to the data by MOIA, the number of emigrants to the Gulf from southern states has dropped significantly in the last few years. Earlier, we had spoken about the fact that Kerala was one of the main place from where immigrants went to the Gulf. This drop in emigration from the southern states has two aspects to it. One, that South Indian states now provide better job prospects for the people there. And two, there is not much difference when it comes to salary they now earn either in India or in the Gulf region. In this scenario, the North has now overtaken the South in the number of immigrants to the Gulf. Emigration to the Gulf is a difficult process, and therefore there are a lot of recruitment processes and agencies in place which we need to now consider. Recruitment to the Gulf is an expensive and complicated process, and sometimes migrants are duped by recruitment agencies. Quite often, money is taken from them and they are not sent at all, or then they are overcharged for the services provided. According to the rules, visa and transportation charges should in fact be borne by the employer, but often this is flouted since migrants are not aware of it. This issue is complicated further by the fact that most of the migrants, as we mentioned earlier, are semi-skilled and unskilled workers. They are therefore not aware of the rules and are often desperate to get a visa to go abroad. A study by HRW reveals that most of the Indian workers, in fact, have had to pay around $2,000 to $3,000 to secure a job in the Gulf. The emigrants have been paying this amount by borrowing from family, friends, by taking a loan from moneylenders at high interest rates, or selling gold ornaments or land, and they do this in the hope of a better future in an unknown or unseen country. On the other hand, we should also remember that for the unskilled workers, getting documents like passports and other papers that they need for immigration is very difficult. They therefore feel that they have no option other than to pay the amount asked for. What is more problematic is that even after reaching the Gulf, they have to be dependent on the kafil or sponsor who is responsible for their food, stay and healthcare facility. Moreover, they have to undergo a thorough medical checkup, and this dependency creates a space for exploitation of these migrants. Despite this, the most important source of their inspiration to migrate to an alien, unseen, unknown country is the success of their neighbor who has returned from the Gulf. What is heartening to know is that the Indian government has put in protective measures. Let us see what these are. In 1983, the government of India first took the initiative for keeping records of Indian immigrants. The MOIA, or the Ministry for Overseas Indian Affairs, was entrusted with the responsibility of safeguarding the interests of Indian nationals working abroad through the Emigration Act of 1983. This required all workers seeking contractual appointment abroad to seek emigration clearance from any of the 8 offices of the protectors of immigrants. This rule is still in place for semi-skilled and unskilled laborers. Professionals and skilled laborers, however, can avail of the non-clearance facility. Let us see the conditions of work that these immigrants have to face. We have already said that low-skilled workers constitute a large chunk of immigrants. These are often forced to live in subpar conditions. They face many human rights abuses, which include taking away of their documents and other form of abuses like beatings, cutting off of their hands, confining them to specific spaces, etc. They are often not even paid what they are promised back home. Moreover, the Indian labor does not come under the local labor laws. Thus, the Indian immigrants abroad, especially the unskilled and semi-skilled laborers, have to work in conditions that amount to modern-day slavery. The influential Indian business community in the Gulf, however, does not face such conditions. They have a registered community association, and this provides a platform for interaction between visiting dignitaries and influential locals. It is not surprising that less than half the migrants to the Gulf are women. These women too have to face the kind of abuse that Indian indentured labor faced during the British colonial phase. Let us now consider the new immigration policies in host countries. Due to long presence of foreigners on Arab soil and also huge monetary burden to the host, the trend of declining immigration started between 1997 and 1999. In the year 1993, the Saudi government came up with a policy that at any time the immigration population should not exceed more than 20% of the kingdom's population. As a result, the Saudi administration forced business enterprises to employ more Saudis than outsiders. Moreover, as a part of Arabization, the government of Kuwait put restrictions on the immigration of dependent workers who are earning less than US dollars of the amount of 1,500 per month for the public sector and 2,200 US dollars per month for the private sector. In addition to this, many Indian workers were sent back in 2013 and 2014. The major difference between emigration to the Gulf and to the West is that even if you spend 2 decades in a state like UAE, you will neither get a green card nor a citizenship status. Once you finish your work and your contract is over, you have to go back to India. In very exceptional cases, Oman has granted citizenship to very few Indians. Let us look at the social and cultural life that the immigrants encounter in GCC. Many Gulf countries have very strict laws based on the Sharia. Religious freedom is very limited or is completely absent for migrants. Indian migrants, as a result, face varied issues. There is no Hindu temple in Saudi Arabia, and Hindus are not allowed to worship in public, though they constitute a sizable number. In fact, propagation of religion by non-Muslims is banned, and conversion from Islam to another religion is punishable by death. Conditions in Qatar are not very different. For Muslim immigrants, there is freedom to participate in the local public religious activities, visit mosques, and so on. The saving grace is that, however, there are temples in Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, the UAE, and even Yemen. Furthermore, though there is a huge business in GCC with the outside world, their official language is Arabic. It is also difficult to interact with the locals. Thus, the situation that the immigrants have to face very often is moving only from their work to their home and their home to their work. On the positive side, Indians have established a large number of schools throughout the region which follow the Indian curriculum of CBSE. So too, since it is a large diaspora, a number of facilities and conveniences have emerged to cater to its needs, like restaurants, shops, and theatres which offer Indian products and services. Let us now consider the flip side. that is, the impact back home of the immigrants in the GCC. First, let us look at the impact on the economic life in India through remittances. The Gulf migration provides 4 lakh jobs for Indians every year. Of these, 38% of the migrants were originally unemployed when they were in India. These migrants now regularly send remittances back home in cash or kind, and these are a part of their earnings. The remittances from migrants working abroad are important both for families of migrants and the balance of payment reserves of their home country. India gets the highest amount of remittance in the world, roughly around 70 billion US dollars from all over the world. Money from some of the Gulf countries is also transferred through Hawala. The major share of remittances from Gulf countries is received by Kerala, a fact that we had mentioned even earlier. Though the major effect of this is seen on the housing sector, changes are also reflected in the consumption pattern, investment pattern, lifestyle, housing, purchase power, religion, and education of those back home. Second is the impact on the family and socio-cultural life. Gulf migration has largely been a single-sex migration as mentioned earlier. That means most of the times men go alone as migrants to the Gulf. Therefore, it is not a family migration. And this is because of the terms and conditions of jobs and government policies. At the level of popular culture, what labor migrants bring back with them often has a profound influence on a number of local developments, such as hybrid forms of music, dance, art, popular culture, cuisine, and architectural forms. Influences of the local migrants can also be seen in the use of Arabic words and names in the local culture. What is the flip side, however, are the tensions and difficulties that the family left back home have to face in the absence of the father for the children, and women having to take on the responsibility of running the household and at times even supplementing the family income. The third area that we need to look at is that of return migration. Certain migrants come back after expiry of their contract with the sponsor in the Gulf. Some get another term for a few years through renewal of contracts. These migrants keep going again and again to the Gulf. Most migrants aim to earn quick money and then come back home and settle down. So they do not seek renewal of the contracts on their own. During the Gulf War in the late 1990s, most of the Indian immigrants were evacuated from Iraq and the neighboring states. The war phase was the worst phase for the government of India as well as for the migrants. Both were losing a source of income. The emigration of semi-skilled and unskilled workers has, however, increased the demand for certain categories of workers within Kerala, because those who are technically proficient in that area are now working in the Gulf. This has resulted into in-migration into Kerala from other states. It has also been noticed that with some families returning after having achieved prosperity and others, the non-migrants, still having their earlier standard of living, the social fabric has become highly disharmonious. A very important question in the context of migration to the Gulf is that, does migration to the Gulf constitute a diaspora at all? Why is this question coming into being? And does this question really have an answer? The fact is that given that the diaspora is not allowed to permanently settle there, whether it can be called a diaspora at all is a question that remains. Professor Myron Weiner has a term for this. He calls it the incipient diaspora. Whether the Indian immigrants go to the Gulf and become a fully formed diaspora depends on the developments in the next few decades, both in the host and home country policies, is what one needs to remember. What is important to understand that the contribution of Indians to the development of the host countries of the Gulf is widely acknowledged. A number of people of Indian origin have been granted Omani nationality by Sultan Qaboos. A large number of migrants to the Gulf are, however, semi-literate and not educated enough to understand the ground reality of the alien nation. These unskilled migrants are vulnerable to middlemen. This is the reality of the diaspora to the Gulf. This situation can be and has to be improved. For this, the Indian government needs to put some measures in place. These include better support at the local level through the Indian Embassy, proper checking of details of recruiters and welfare measures for the labor in the host country, insurance schemes for immigrants who travel to the Gulf, as well as better counseling and medical facilities by state governments as well as the Indian government. A 24/7 helpline can be of immense benefit. Moreover, a change in the kafil system can bring great relief for the emigrants to the Gulf. To conclude, what one needs to remember is that the Gulf is going to be an attractive place for Indians, whether they are skilled people or the semi-skilled and the unskilled, the latter more so. It is therefore important for the government to ensure that they are not cheated and they get the best out of their desire to emigrate. Whether or not they can be called diasporics is another question that is going to remain so. But that only time can decide. Thank you.